everybody to this episode of the Ben webinar series. As I mentioned, we're doing something different today. We're going to basically do a conversation with four exceptional entrepreneurs, and hopefully it'll be a good learning session for everybody to understand their experiences. What ties this panel together is the fact that we have female entrepreneurs, but that is not really the focus of this webinar. It's really to learn from accomplished entrepreneurs. There is that unifying theme that they are females, but the reality is we want to learn from their experiences, and that will be the focus today. So with that in mind, let me, and I didn't see whether did Tanya join. I didn't know if she, Tanya, you in there? Because I know I hadn't heard from you. Is Tanya in?
Tanya's here.
Okay, great.
You're muted, Tanya.
I am here.
Okay, okay. Very good. So let me do just a quick introduction, and we'll dive right in. So first of all, let me introduce Angelique Irvin. Angelique is a former Bell Labs research scientist, which again is kind of interesting and unique. She has over 20 years of experience running an electrical entrepreneurial venture called Clearline. She leads Clearline, which builds AI and network-enabled night vision systems, so really elaborate camera systems. And there are deployments of Clearline's product at the U.S. borders, and I guess to be soon at the White House. So some really significant placements of your products in very, very high-profile locations, and it helps monitor a lot of our critical infrastructure. So welcome, Angelique. Carol Burns. Carol is a serial entrepreneur, having worked at 3 startup companies. So very interesting is this isn't your first rodeo. You've been doing this for quite a while, so very different sort of experience based. She has worked with 3 startups in Wayne, Pennsylvania. She's 2 times a co-founder, and currently is the CEO and leading Cagent Vascular. Cagent Vascular has developed and commercialized a specialty angioplasty balloon. So I do tell people that I never want to use Carol's product, because if I need a stent, then I'm doing things really bad in my life. So I'm keeping away as best as possible. Marcia O'Connor, please welcome Marcia. She's the founder and CEO of the O'Connor Group, and the O'Connor Group is a 14-year-old woman-owned company based in King of Prussia. And that helps companies build with their building and outsourcing of the human resources and talent. The O'Connor Group is a certified woman-owned business and is a recipient of both the 2021 Inc. 500, Soaring 76, Philly 100 Quartz Best Companies for Remote Workers. So Marcia's put together an organization that really clicks and works very, very well. Her team is over now 75 consultants that live and work around the country. So an interesting management job for a very, very remote organization. And she's also the president of the Philadelphia chapter of the Entrepreneurs Organization. So welcome, Marcia. Tanya, in 2017, she launched Mom Your Business, which is a nonprofit that helps Black and Brown female entrepreneurs launch and grow their businesses, whether they're in the early stages of brainstorming or in the later stages of seeking capital. So really, we have a really interesting group of people, all different sort of backgrounds and kinds of ways that they have got to where they are today. So I'd like to start off, and I don't know how we could do this, is I think either one of the 4 panelists can sort of jump in, and and you can monitor when you sort of jump in the conversation. But I'd like to start this by just exploring the fact that you are entrepreneurs. And can you tell people, how did you become an entrepreneur? That was something I probably never would have thought of, is in my career path. So looking back, what were the signs that sort of recognized, that you recognized, that sort of said, you know what, I think I can do this. I want to start and lead a company. So is there anything in your background that led you to this career choice?
Yep, I can start with that. So I was 12 years old, and my mom said no to me buying Jordache jeans. And she said, if you want to buy a pair of Jordache jeans, you got to figure it out. And I said, okay. So my dad's like, hey, how about I'll show you how to mow the lawn. And I was that Tom girl that had no problem getting dirty all over the place. And I said, show me how to do it. And I did it really well. So my neighbors all hired me to basically mow their lawns, and I would outshine the boys in the neighborhood who usually got those roles. And the one thing I always was told, you do something, but everybody does it, but do it the best. And so I was the one that would also weed the garden. I would use the hedges to, trim the hedges. I would do all the extra stuff that no one did, especially cleaning up all the grass cuttings. And that to always remind me, like, I really like have my own business and how it all works. And so I got into business and started into accounting, and then went into recruiting and found a love. And for years, I kept saying to my husband, like, listen, I could do this better. And then one day he looked at me, he's like, dear God, he goes, either you start doing something about it or stop talking about it. And I read the book, The Alchemist, which is basically how the black cloud and rest of your life, where you can either shoulda, coulda, woulda, or say I did it or I tried it. But at least I know I did it. And so that was it. I went into my boss. I literally quit. And that was 14 years ago. Here we are.
Wow. So that early stage that DNA was imprinted on you early on.
Mm-hmm.
I should probably go after her because I have a very similar story. Farm girl from Oregon. I am Latina despite my very white skin and very red hair. So we grew up in Latin neighborhoods eating arroz con pollo and frijoles, and Spanish was my first language. And my mother made $119 a month take home. That was a real motivator to be an entrepreneur. So I delivered 43 papers, but I was clever. I got the trailer court, and I mowed all the lawns in the trailer court for $5 a piece. I also cleaned the horse stalls, and I worked in the pig barns. So that was pretty much the same kind of motivator. If I wanted anything, I had to buy it myself. Then I spent 20 years in corporate America. I built a business at Bell Laboratories from 0 to 500 million. I took it 2/3 of the way up the ramp. I had full P&L responsibility. I made, I want to say I made $60,000 a year, and my direct reports made $119,000 a year. And that's when I decided I wanted to run my own show. I was one of 5 women out of 1,000 members in my area of Bell Labs. And I decided that if I wanted to get rewarded for my work, I probably needed to do it on my own. So I actually went back to business school and got a triple major in finance, marketing, and entrepreneurship, because my inner nerd, my inner engineer was going to keep me from being able to run a business. And I built 2 businesses since, both electro-optic. So this is my second one.
Well, my story is probably similar to all of yours as well. I think what I learned early on is that in order to be an entrepreneur, you have to be able to sell. And that's sell to raise money or sell to bring people on. If I look back on my childhood, when I was a Girl Scout, I sold the most Girl Scout cookies. When I worked at Friendly Ice Cream, I sold the most sundaes for a special, Christmas time kind of thing. So I think I always knew that I was like a salesperson. My mother always said, whenever you decided to do something, you do it. I didn't know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but when it kind of fell on my lap to take the first job as a CEO, I realized I could do it because I knew I could sell.
Well, for me, I guess I'm the accidental entrepreneur of the group, because it really happened for me by accident. My uncle was a huge influence in me, and I remember even working with him, starting his first video production company growing up, and he was in insurance and everything like that. But really, entrepreneurship for me started when I wrote my first book back in 2008, I'm guessing. And I've written 3 other books since then. And being a self-published author, we started our own publishing company, which we still have today, and publish other authors. And then also later, through the mentorship work that we do, we started a t-shirt company with a mentee of ours as well. So for me, it really happened by accident. The helping part came with the work that we were doing. I was in nonprofit for the majority of my career, working with women around the time that the welfare to work programs started. And so we were able to help countless women during that time. And the mentorship really happened after hours. In most cases, it was helping them to start their business, or it was helping them to change careers or parenting or fix their credit or buy their first home. And so back in 2017, when we started Mom Your Business, it was doing something that I love to do, which is event coordination, which is another passion of mine. So we were coordinating an event. We put together an event that had a panel discussion. We had an all-girl band. We had vendors. And a friend of mine said that she thought it was more than just a one-time thing. It just happened to be around Mother's Day. And we put together a brainstorming session. And that was how we landed on our mission, which was to help mompreneurs, which we define as any woman actively in business, turn obstacles into opportunities by connecting them to resources that lead to success in business and in life.
What's interesting, it's fascinating with, listening to those answers, except maybe for Tanya's uncle, what really struck me was, it wasn't that you came from families of entrepreneurs. So it wasn't like your dad was the lawyer or your mom's the doctor and you're following that career path. Is each of you kind of like found an opportunity where for yourself, you dove in to get something done and accomplish something you want. So it's really fascinating. It's not as though the family history was something you followed into because, entrepreneurs are there. So it really, really fascinating. You just sort of jump started on your own. So that's really intriguing. So as you did this,
I'm going to bet, Mark, that we're all a little irreverent too, and that helps.
Maybe
do our own thing.
Well, maybe that can help. So I'm going to write down that as well as a key characteristic everybody needs to have to jump into this. So you did kind of jump in. I mean, you really jumped in the pond and started going, even whether it's Girl Scout cookies or cutting grass better than the guys. That's intriguing. So as you're doing this, talk a little bit about your role models and your mentors. And I'm really looking at, was that a deliberate choice? Did someone tell you to do it? Did you sort of back into it? And then when you started finding mentors or advisors or teachers or whatever, did you do that strategically, or like Tanya said, well, I kind of fell into this? I mean, what would you tell to other entrepreneurs about your journey in finding those people who guided you? How planned or how random was that for all of you?
Well, I mean, for me, mentorship is everything. Even when we started Mom Your Business, I wasn't really sure what we were going to be or what we were going to do. But there was one thing I knew for sure, was that we would have a mentorship component as a part of that. And so throughout my professional life, mentorship has been absolutely everything. Starting with Gene Hunt when I was at the Campaign for Working Families, throughout my business career with folks, both male and females, from Jim Burnett over at Vested In out in West Philly, Tracy Brala over at the Venture Cafe, and my mentor even now, Shelley Bell, who is the founder of Black Girl Ventures out of Washington, D.C., which I really credit for really asking me the question that led us to start Founders to Funders, our business accelerator program, when she simply asked me what were we going to accelerate them to. And that was really the catalyst for us really starting our accelerator program that we are running today. In our second cohort, we have been able to get women access to capital. We've helped them to raise almost $50,000 in non-diluted capital, which is very important and essential for Black and Brown female founders who are often stuck in the bootstrapping cycle. So for me personally, mentorship and the business coaches that we have made all the difference in the world, not just to me, but to the women that we serve.
And I'll speak on that. I bootstrapped this last business. My last one was venture backed, and it's super, super hard work. And I would say, I was very fortunate to convince Wharton that they wanted to let me in and to go to a good business school. And I was very fortunate to have some people like Glenn Lodish, who just, when I wrote my first business plan, wrote me a check and mentored me and told me when I was full of horse manure. And, and this is really key. And I think one of the things that women lose out on more than any other community is mentorship. We tend to see these bright young boys and think we have to teach them to be leaders. And we don't spend enough time mentoring women in our community. Women in community don't spend enough time letting somebody help, because we've been trained that we're supposed to be the helpers, the caregivers, and you know what? You got to let people help. I have a great group of men around me right now who help me and who mentor me.
Talk about it, Angelique. Talk about it.
Yeah, you got to go to people who've already done it. There are less women, unfortunately, that have done it. Even though my testimony for Congress, women run businesses grow at twice the rate of men run businesses.
That's right.
I mean, we're very good at it, but we can be better if we get that mentorship. We get that mentorship in finance, in cash flow, number one, in sales and marketing, in strategy, in how you use metrics. Metrics is key. You got to write a plan and you got to measure to that plan. And those are the areas where I don't think there's enough resources for women, especially Black and brown women. I have the great advantage of passing. So I get to go through society as an elite. It's not fair, but it is what it is.
And I agree with that. I think your mentors come from different sources. You know, sometimes you want someone to have all those skills and accolades. And to be honest with you, one of my best mentors in high school was the principal secretary. She was only 4'8". I'm 5'9". And this lady taught me more business skills than you can ever imagine. Even how to just answer the phone. You don't say good, you say well. And boy, I was told many times if I didn't do it properly. But I needed someone like that in my life to really guide me, because home wasn't exactly a place that was always roses and sunshine. And so it was a fact that I think people saw that and saw my eagerness and all too. So I was very blessed to have people that just showed up in my life and said, I see potential in you. And when you hear that from somebody who doesn't even know you, that just makes you feel like, what do you see? And I see it too, but maybe it's just me. So having people around you and believe in you just goes so far. And I think it's so important. We are at that age right now too, that everything we say and everything we do, somebody 20 years younger than us is taking notes. They're basically saying, I read exactly what you said, and I'm doing that now. So everything we say and do is making an impact on somebody that we haven't even met yet. And so I think that's really important. I have a great advisory team. Larry, who is always one of my biggest supporters, is one of my advisors on my team. I know, but he keeps it real to make sure that I am listening and making sure we're growing. And, you know, I'll say things are great, great, great. They bring you back down the level. But keep in mind, I have females on my team too. I have both sides of the house. I want the best people around me. And you know what? I don't care sometimes if you have that, no offense to college degrees, but I had people that were basically, one of my best mentors was basically the janitor in my high school, who at the last day of my time there gave me a letter that was so, it made me cry about how proud your parents should be. I'm so proud of you. I've seen you growing up and you're very respectful and I appreciate that. Something like that just meant so much to me about the impact that you have on other people. So to make sure that you always say thank you, doesn't matter what level, we all put our pants on the same way. And the impact that we can have is enormous. So make sure that whatever you're doing out there, make sure you're a role model to not only other people, but people that are going to be following you up those levels, because that's so important.
And following on what you said, Marcia, it's so critical to reach out to the best in each of these areas you need help in, and not just rely on one person, as wonderful as Larry is, and he is.
I would say that
I just wanted to add something if I could, because one of the things that we also did, because Angelique raised an excellent point about the fact that women are good at running businesses, right? And then if you look even deeper, Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. This is a fact. It's not disputable, yet we remain the least funded. And part of that, in a lot of ways, speaks to the fact that while while the access to mentorship may be low for some, everywhere I look and every time we talk to somebody, there's a program opportunity that comes with mentorship. And so we have to begin to take more advantage of those opportunities when they are presented to us. But also I want to encourage those of you that have that expertise. We work very closely with PACT. Through their Mentor Connect program. All the women that come through our program are assigned a mentor through PAC. So I just want to encourage those of you that may not be mentoring and sharing those resources and levels of expertise that you have to get in the game. There are women out here that absolutely need that help and need that support.
Carol?
I would say the mentors that I have found have been mixed, males and females. And for me, I really watch the people that have been successful in whatever field, and that has come back to help me quite a bit. So if I need a finance question, I might ask my friend Dennis, or if it's one about managing a board. Kathy Crothall in this area has been a serial successful entrepreneur. She's great. Shelley Boyce started MedRisk in this area. And if I have a question about, my senior staff, I might go to her. But I think I've had the benefit of just watching people, those that I have valued and seen success, and whether in selling a company or raising capital, I can tap into those as I need to. So I would just say, just keep your eyes open and follow those people that have been successful, male or female.
It's interesting, and listening to the responses, and this is where I was trying to understand more, how much of this was planned versus how much of it was, it seemed like Marcia interacted with people that just gave her really positive feedback. That wasn't planned. That was very, very unplanned. So what I'm trying to, maybe, and listen to what Carol and Angelique said, maybe if you have grown as entrepreneurs and as leaders, has the process of finding those mentors actually become more systematic and planned? It was a little more random in the early stages, or am I reading into it too much? Because it seems like early on, you kind of like life took you in different directions, and you said, "Oh my goodness, I can learn from this person." Whereas now, I think Angelique and Carol said, seek the best and seek many. That sounds a lot more strategic than random. So am I reading into it too much? And what would you counsel other entrepreneurs how they should build their advisors and mentor network? What would you tell them as a key learning?
I think I would say you need different mentors for different times. Now, I'm unfortunate in my industry. I worked for 2 Nobel laureates, Francis Crick and Arno Penzias. And I have had almost all male mentors, unfortunately. I probably would really benefit from a strong female mentor, but you need different mentors at different time. When my company was $1 million in revenue, I needed a much different grade of mentor than right now, where I'm trying to work on getting to 100 million, and I'm not near there yet. And I need a really different group of people who understand how to get through that spot that you're at. People who've walked through that terrain, who've already experienced it. And sometimes they're going to give you advice. You got to keep your brain cells on and really listen to it and really trust your gut. Don't let somebody tell you, "Oh yeah, you got to do what I did because it's this." Trust your gut. The times I've gone wrong is when I've listened to somebody else and gone, "Well, they've done it before. I ought to just hand over the reins." Well, that's probably the times I've done worse. So you pick a lot of different mentors for different stuff. And that way you're not also relying too heavily on somebody and kind of wearing out that relationship, because these mentorships have emotional bank accounts. You make deposits, you make withdrawals. You make too many withdrawals and you don't have anything left in the bank and you're negative.
Yeah, it's a journey, guys. And you want to make sure that you pick people around you that believe in you. And I had an opportunity to actually pick my advisory team. And I have 3 people on my team. I have 1 female, 2 males, and they are very helpful. We talk every month, and I always have a prepared agenda as well as my financials and all too to go through all that. But those mentors were different than I had mentors 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I wanted to be around everybody who, how'd you get there? What'd you do? How'd you do this? And, really ask a ton of questions like a little kid in a candy store, but growing up, it was more about having mentors that, that literally were more inspirational and building me up and getting my confidence up. And I remember one of them, my next door neighbor, who I just was an amazing mentor in my life. And I walked home from school one time and my head was down, and he remember pulling me over. He's like, "Come here." He called me Maggie Scratch, come here. And he said to me, "Why is your head down?" I said, "I don't know." He's like, "I don't ever want to see you put your head down ever again. You should be be so proud of who you are." And you know what? Every time I just automatically look down at my shoes and like, "Put that head up, young lady." And I always hear that in there. So it's really how certain words, certain things in your life, you're going to come across certain people that are going to be so dynamic and so helpful in so many ways that you don't always see it, but it is planned. I mean, I have a planned advisory board now, but I didn't have a planned mentor system when I was younger.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
And it-
Mhm.
All right. Let me just, I want to just raise something that Angelique said, which I think is, she said, you said, Angelique, you'd be sort of forward, you'd be out there, right? You'd be a little spicy. But you said something that struck me, and I want to go there just for a second, because I don't know if I could even say such a thing, which is you sort of asserted that women are trained not to seek help, and they are sort of the providers. And
Absolutely.
they're not,
We're supposed to serve the coffee and tea. We're not supposed to ask for coffee.
isn't
And
it-
I got to tell you, when I interview executive assistants, 30% of the candidates tell me, oh, I didn't realize this was for a woman. I can't work for a woman.
Wow.
They don't want to serve a woman. They don't want to go get my coffee and get my tea and they'll do that for a guy.
I don't know if any of you remember the movie Working Girl with Melanie Griffith and I guess that was Harrison Ford, I guess. At the end of the movie, when she finally got that dream job, she still thought that she was going there to be a secretary. It wasn't until she got there, when she got there and the secretary was actually in her office with her feet up, and the secretary told her that this was her office, that she realized that she actually had another position that she was not accustomed to Angelique's point. And so often we find ourselves, for lack of a better word, with the mindset of servitude. Our leadership needs to be developed. And I say that to say that even with the mompreneurs that we work with, and that's why we call them mompreneurs, because so many of them are actively women, and our name really comes from, and it's not about being a mother, because I get asked that so often. It's about the fact that we are carers and nurturers, and your business is your baby. And so I often tell people, whether you come to us and you are expecting, you have an idea or a business in your belly, and you need someone to help you push, we want to be able to do that. You have a business that's in this terrible twos and it can't seem to grow, and at a certain level, we want to help you to grow that business. And even if you're at a level of you're at that teenage years, and you've been
I think mine's in its teenage years.
and those teenage years where it's hard-headed and wants to do its own thing,
Not listening.
and it's not listening. We want to be able to help you there. So I think, to Angelique's point, the challenges that we face as women entrepreneurs in each of those levels is very different, and it comes from a different place, just because of the nature of who we are.
Well,
Touche.
and I'll invite Carol to comment, but I think, for me personally, I think it's actually a little bit distressing to hear that in today's day and age, that somehow women are being trained not to ask for help and assistance. I mean, it's almost unthinkable in this day and
I'd like
age.
to remind you that my grandmother did not have the right to vote. And then we'll move on in this conversation. I want to hear Carol.
Carol, do you feel that way, that somehow some, as a female entrepreneur, all these pressures made it harder, or make it harder for some female entrepreneurs you see to not necessarily get plugged in the way that maybe the male counterparts are?
I'm not so sure that I agree 100%. When I look at myself and some other women that I know that are in these roles, they're right in there, and they're asking for help. I don't know, maybe it comes from growing up with 3 brothers, and I learned to be pretty tough. I don't know, but
Well, Carol, I
think
think
that,
it's industry. Carol, I think it's industry specific as well. So you got to look at, I'm in a very male, high tech defense world. So some of the other industries are just doing a much better job, I think. Do you think?
I don't know. Possibly. I'm in a male-dominated field, medical devices. There, unfortunately, very few women in medical device, but I guess I just have a different perspective.
Yeah, that's intriguing.
I think we do. It's just the women that I see in this field and in the upper echelons in medical device, they are asking the questions, and they're not. I don't disagree that it doesn't happen. I'm sure that it does, Angelique, but I'm seeing a lot of progress. I really am, and I encourage women to go into this field. And if you feel that way, get over it and move on, because there are tremendous opportunities out there. I love when I see that more women are angel investors, and the more women can invest and be financially secure, that's very empowering for women. So I just, if you feel that way, maybe I'm, again, coming from 3 brothers, get over it and move on.
Good advice.
Very, very interesting. I think it's just worth noting that sometimes you take for granted these underlying dynamics that are just there, and you just should be receptive to, everybody's worldview is different, and hopefully it all moves better toward. Hopefully it'll keep progressing, but we're not at the end state we want. So we talked a little about headwinds, and maybe some of the headwinds are, assembling your team of advisors, whatever. So can you talk a little bit more about just your experience? And this now is much more female centric. I mean, what specific, headwinds have you faced? And then maybe you can also share the fact that there might be some tailwinds that are helping you in your business. And what can you share with other entrepreneurs about, listen, how can you exploit some of the advantages you might have as on the other side, you're fighting some of the constant headwinds. So can you talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what are those things that is keeping you from pushing forward, and what are the things that you should be riding the tailwind and moving ahead faster?
Well, for me, I would really just say, not just for me, I would say for Black female founders in general, is capital, and women in general as well. Women receive less than 3% of venture capital, and Black women receive less than 1% of venture capital. So capital is the big issue for us. The other thing is technology. And there's a difference between being technologically savvy and being tech enabled. And so there are some opportunities to improve technology. We saw the impact of technology throughout this pandemic. Those businesses, specifically those that were on commercial corridors, that did not were not tech enabled with automation and how it impacted their business. Those type of things, we really have to begin to work at getting ahead or catching up to the curve as it relates to technology and automation and growing our business. That is a huge tailwind that some have not, fully grabbed hold to. It has impacted minority businesses in particular, because so many were offered opportunities through PPPs and things like that, and were not even able to access a lot of those funds for whatever the reason. So for me, it's very simple. It's the technology. And improving the access and opportunities and learning and usage of technology, specifically around automation, and then this capital.
Okay, those are certainly some headwinds. Are there anything that, from where you sit though, you can take advantage of, that you say, hey, there's an advantage, I might as well use this advantage while I have it? Is there anything that you see that other entrepreneurs should be riding that are helping you push forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, like with PAC, with the mentorship opportunities, there are tons of opportunities out here to improve technology. There are opportunities through organizations like Spotify, PayPal. There are other opportunities. There are plenty of organizations that have presented, businesses that have presented opportunities for folks to be able to increase their automation and their technology.
Okay. How about others? What are the things that might be holding you back? But what are some of those things that you should really be, taking advantage of and gliding forward, because you do have some things that are in your favor? How about anybody else that wants to address that?
I think being, I'm a WVENC certified business, and I've been aboard that probably about 7 years. About 7 years ago, it was good to have that logo. I was always mad because I paid money for it and I didn't really see, okay, I did all this work. What am I getting for it? I'm starting to see why now, because a lot more people want to work with, what do? You fit women? Do you fit diversity? That they're really taking more note to it now. So I'm getting a lot more opportunities thrown my way because of that. So the pendulum is starting to swing on that side, but I definitely had to make sure I had that certification behind me. So there are some things out there that are being opened up and opening up the doors. It's just us making sure we take advantage of it. Because
Right.
a lot of times we'll say, well, we don't really need that much. I'm like, no, get yourself out there. There's more awards, more visibility. All those things bring investors and stuff like that money to you because it shows that you're doing really well. So take advantage of all those opportunities.
Certifications are huge.
I assume honestly, no, you don't feel apologetic at all. Any of you apologetic about using those advantages, right? I mean,
No. For us, it doesn't do, I mean, nobody's going to buy a $500,000 surveillance system because I'm woman owned. They're going to buy it because it's the best out there and because we exceed and we can sell it at the right price. But I would say that just networking, when I go to conferences, there are now, Carol, in your defense, there are now women at the head of all these defense contractors that weren't there just 3 years ago. So it's absolutely shifting. But I'd say that one of the things is when I go to a conference, I stand out. And so part of that is my spiciness, which is true. Mark knows me well, but I stand out. And so I develop real relationships with people and I develop relationships over years. And I have 15,000 people in my BlackBerry,
Wow.
including Larry. I have 2 contacts for him for some reason. So I have 15,002. And you're twice as important, Larry. So I would say that's really key. I would say the other thing that's really key is having a coach. It's so critical to have a leadership coach. I use Mary Simon. She's amazing, but there are lots of good leadership coaches out there, but you need to have a coach that will grow with you. You can grow out of your coach. Doesn't matter what gender you are. You can grow out of your coach. And you might need to grow a little bit more. So that would be my my comments there.
oh, Marcia, Carol, about the headwinds and tailwinds. How do you view it?
I think coach, as Angelique mentioned, is very important. I think having a coach, you're never too old to stop learning. And, I don't care what age you get, there is a coach for you kind of a deal. So I have my advisors, but I also have a business coach. And then I'm involved with obviously EO entrepreneurs, and I like having that dynamic around me all the time to hear different things. But you listen, one of my things my dad told me, he's like, you're gonna have to work twice as hard because you're always smiling and happy. I was like, well, why is that a negative? Why can't that be a positive? And ironically enough, it's not until I'll have these conversations with these men, for clients. And a lot of times until I tell them I came from Arthur Anderson, I have an accounting degree, they're like, oh, you know what you're doing. You're not a blonde. I'm not, kid you not. And so to me, I'm like, oh, I have to constantly try to still get up there. But then I just feel like I take charge of a room. I'm 5'9". I take that, I do high heels. And I do that to my advantage because I want to make sure, like, you're not going to be walking on me and don't interrupt me. I've earned this right to be at this stage here. And so it gets to that point, but it's so weird because I still feel like I still have to prove that sometimes. And it gets annoying because I'm like, when is that going to stop? It's like, we're all there. We're not a female CEO. We're a CEO.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
right.
so important.
That's right. That's right.
And hopefully we're the best CEO for the role.
That's right.
And if we're not, then
right.
just like any male CEO, we should get replaced.
That's right.
Exactly.
And just to add to the networking part of it, I mean, one of my favorite places is the Venture Cafe over at 3675 Market Street. They have been just a tremendous asset and resource for us on so many levels. And I encourage folks to really tap in to that, as well as PWNC, the Philadelphia Network of Women Connections, run by Felicia Spivey Shankin, another great resource and opportunity, an organization that we connect with. There are a lot of great organizations out here. I do a class on certification that I used to do certifications for a program for that Training University used to run. So and I do the classes now for SCORE once a month. That shows people the benefits of how to grow your business through certification, and it's really an important. And again, the thing is to understand it's just another marketing tool. Understanding that it's a marketing tool, another tool to have in your toolbox to get you, as the ladies have said, exposure and get you in front of people.
And Tanya, the SBA was hugely valuable to me.
Absolutely.
Usually, I have a degree from Wharton. I can reach out to people who are the top business people in the country. And yet I found that the coaches that I had, John Banks at the SBA, were really good at helping me through many stages of our growth.
Absolutely.
They're probably not the people at this stage, but when you're in that under $10 million stage, boy, just the business plan on the SBA website is a fabulous outline.
Yeah, let me before we go into capital, because Tanya brought that up, but there was a question. I will interrupt because there's a question that sort of led from the coaches discussion. It was, and I'll read it verbatim: the highs of being an entrepreneur are very high, the lows are equally low. How do you keep your work-life balance and mental health in check? Anything besides or in addition to the coaches?
Well, I would say that there is no such thing as work-life balance.
No such thing, Carol.
Yeah, it just kind of doesn't exist, but you just have to prioritize. Like sometimes something very acute is happening in the business, and that's going to take all of your attention. And then when things recede a little bit and maybe some things are missing at home, you need to then put the time in there. But you just need to be able to prioritize and shift and pivot. And that's the best advice I can give. I don't really know that having a true work-life balance exists.
I call it work-life integration, Carol.
That's it.
I get up in the morning, I pack the lunches, I get them on the school bus or run one to early care, before care. Then I work like heck. Then I run home at 4:30 to do a little something. Then I work like heck. And then the boys go to bed and I do more. And for those who don't know me, I have 2 special needs kids. One was born legally blind and the other is severely autistic, has ADHD, dyslexia, and is profoundly gifted. So he can figure out something stupid to do and before his impulse control gets in the way and do it. So I've had a lot of challenges around that. I've had to put a son through, Mark, 5 or 6 different schools, all kinds of camps. I've been doing reading intervention, autism intervention, trying to get him into college when he was 12 because he needed that intellectual stimulus. So it's, you don't ever have a balance, but if you're fortunate enough to have a good partner, and I have an amazing husband who's got sainthood right now. I've been on travel for 8 weeks. I'm gone 5 days a week for 8 weeks, and he's doing all the childcare and all the sitting down with homework every night. And it was 7 hours yesterday. He sat with my eldest to do homework. So, that is super helpful. Not everybody is that lucky.
I think the description I'm hearing is probably what a lot of entrepreneurs would say. I mean, if you choose this as a career path and as a lifestyle, if you will, you give up a lot of things, and that's whether male or female.
I'm going to correct that. I don't think you give up a lot of things. You do things differently.
Okay.
I mean, my eldest came home last week and he said, "Mom, I am more proud of you than any of those other mainline moms that are focused on painting their nails. You're saving the White House. You got a presidential accommodation from Barack Obama for saving our nation's national security. None of these other moms have done that. I want to marry a woman like you someday." So I'm not sure that my kids are hurting because of this. I just want to say, my kids have it. I'm just more of the working mom, like some people are working dads. And some people travel more as dads and the kids come up okay. And some people travel more as moms. I don't think you're giving up a lot. I think you're doing it differently. And so it's more integrative.
Okay.
Yeah, I like the
I
word that
agree.
you used, Angelique, as far as integration, because
Yeah.
that's what we say. We say blending family, work, life, and a bunch of other stuff, because that's really what we're doing. And Carol hit it. It's really about prioritizing, how you do those things. And someone asked in the chat about, what if you are a single parent without a partner? And I meet that criteria, even though my twin sons are adults now. But when they were younger, and we were running our publishing company and things like that, and I'm very active in my church, what I learned to do was to really involve them in whatever it was that I was doing. Jeremy was always, and still does, if I ask him, helping me set up events, manning tables, taking pictures. Same thing for Isaiah. They were always a part of what we were doing as a part of our business. So that is one thing that I would say as far as that's concerned.
And I push things down on the children. I say, look, we have to run the household as a community. So, by the time my kids were 5, they could put a meal on the table for themselves and for the whole family. It might have been cereal with strawberries, but they could, they are very high functioning as a result. My 14-year-old mows 2.5 acres, so they have grown as a result of carrying some and being expected to be, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I actually, but you gotta make time.
Yep.
I called my son this morning. I called him last night. I texted him silly things throughout the day to keep him alive. I take a few minutes here to be there. I'm not an absent parent. I'm just a traveling parent.
All right, let's, given the time, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about capital. Historically, a lot of female entrepreneurs have been really underrepresented at the table for capital. And I don't know if that's changing, so I want to hear from you if it's changing. But I'd also like to hear, as a female entrepreneur, what would you counsel your peers? What to expect when you are going out there raising capital? So that's one. This is what you should be prepared for. And then secondly, and I don't even know who the powers that be are, but if you had to talk to, if you had to deliver a message to the heads of, private equity and VCs, to make funding and capital for women more accessible, if that really is still a huge problem, what would you tell them or her about this challenge that you're facing? So tell me, let's talk about capital. What do you think about that issue? Is better, worse, the same? What do you tell your colleagues if they would ask you about the search for capital as a female entrepreneur?
Well, I've at Cagent, we've raised $43 million, and the company was formed in 2014. And I would say same advice to anyone. You just have to make sure you have a good business plan and you can really describe, your operations and how you're going to give a return to the investors. That's what everyone wants to know. So I would give that same advice to anyone. Just make sure you have a well thought out business plan. I have been successful raising money from, family offices to strategic potential acquirers to, Ben Franklin and Go Philly Fund and some big venture. I've been successful doing that. I don't think I've been advantaged or disadvantaged because I'm a woman. The one thing I question when I see these statistics about the percentage of women that have raised capital, what always seems to be missing, and maybe one of the other panelists has the answer, is what's the denominator? Because when you see 15% of women are getting the capital, well, out of how many applied? That always seems to be missing. So I don't really have a good judge of whether it's improving or not improving. Clearly, there are more men CEOs and entrepreneurs, but maybe we just need more women applying. That's the one piece of data that I don't seem to find in any of these broad statistics that I see. Maybe someone has an answer for me.
Well, Carol, it's not the lack of applications. I'm here to tell you that. It's the lack of women writing checks.
But the percentage.
Yeah, but it's the lack of women writing checks.
Ratio.
There are not enough women writing checks. There are studies that show There are studies that show that when women own VCs, are signing checks, women receive more capital. So we have to do a better job of more women writing checks, and especially when it comes to women of color. The percentages of women of color that have raised $1 million are low, are extremely low. So, but there, and I'm going to find it while we're on this conversation because I want to put it in the chat. I don't think you think I'm just spewing off something off the top of my head. But when women write checks, more women receive capital. It's really just that simple. We've got to start writing more checks.
And I think that a lot of the capital that is run by male organizations, and I've never seen it intentional. I would say all of these organizations embrace bringing in women, but they feel more comfortable with people who look and feel like themselves. So when I first started raising money 20 years ago, 20% of the investors who wanted to invest in me specifically asked me about childbearing. Either one asked what birth control I was on, 4 asked what kind of family plans I had. And I don't think, and this was in 2000. I don't think that happens as much anymore. I think it's getting better. But I think they do look for a certain paradigm. And some of us, I'm a little spicy, as Mark would put it, don't meet their profile. So, if you look at the history of what I've done with capital, I put 50,000 of my own money in my company, bootstrapped it. I raised 1.7 million of capital, and I built the company up with 1.7 million to 43 million in revenue. And now we're looking for capital again. Our first 16 years, our average CAGR was 45.6% for the first 16 years of the company. And we did that on no capital. My competitors did it on 20 or 30 million of capital, which would have been great for me. Maybe I wasn't as good as presenting at them. And Carol, I'm going to guess that you're a much better person to present to an investor than I am.
No.
I'm much more of an engineer.
No.
You're very sweet. I want to invest in you the minute I meet you. You look competent, but I would say that it is still hard. I mean, I recently thought about raising money, and I went out, and I didn't have a lot of time, but I went out to 4 or 5 investors, and the feedback they gave my board was, and my board didn't agree, Len Lodish, Larry, he's on my board, was that, we'd really have to replace the CEO if we invested in this company. Because we don't think she listens. So, and I think it was I think in that particular case,
take their money.
Well, yeah, of course not. Of course not. I'm a majority shareholder. They're not going to replace me. But and I think we have a way of navigating, hopefully, without money. But my point is it's still a cultural piece. We need not only for more women to be writing checks, Tanya, but we need for more men to see female role models. Look at the CEO of Meneric, the fastest growing satellite company in the US. Look at the CEO of Northrop Grumman. Look at the CEO. And we need to start marketing that back to investors of, here's a different profile. Because I'm a little Elon Musk-like, and that's okay if you're Elon Musk because you're a guy, but it's not the right personality if you're female. And so, there's some piece in there where we have to manage how we present ourselves. We need to do a better job. And
so is it so I'm going back. Is it about getting more females to write checks? Is it about better marketing of how well female entrepreneurs are doing? Because I read all the time about statistics of female-run businesses and their returns to investors. So it seems like the marketing effort's in place. I mean, where is the disconnect? How do we reach an equilibrium state where female entrepreneurs are basically, treated in a way that is commensurate with what they can do and what they have done? How do we reach that? Who are the decision makers that need to be watching all this stuff?
it's hard for me to say I've done all bootstrapping, and I just was that kind of person that put money back into the company and money back in the company. I was the breadwinner. And so it was a tough time for 5 years where, I was red tag sale lady to make sure things happen. So I think that it's really figuring out what you need and when. It's also talking to other people and figuring out what are the best programs, what are the best things out there. I mean, Vanessa here has a chat, being green to this capital conversation. When you say we need more women applying for capital, where exactly does one go to apply? Does this mean just investors or grants or something else? And I can tell you from my perspective that, there's SBA, there's a bank letter, there's banks, there's grants, there's so many things. It's so overwhelming sometimes that you want to make sure that you are talking to experts in the field, just people that have been there and done that. Because when you start raising capital, it's a whole different ballgame versus basically bootstrapping and having your own funds from family and friends. So it really ranges, but make sure you surround yourself with people that know what they're doing, what they're talking with. That's really important. And I really have a really good banker too to help you as well.
Okay. We got just a few more minutes to go. And unfortunately, this is, again, a conversation we could do for a couple hours. It's so engaging, but we can't. But I do want to end up on something that, I want to query you guys about the Philadelphia ecosystem. This is where we live. So tell people out there what is working and what is not working for you as an entrepreneur, as a female entrepreneur in the Philadelphia ecosystem. What are the resources you depend on? What are the connections that you would tout as being, differentiated? So talk about Philly, your home. What should people be aware of, pro and con, about Philadelphia, and how do we do it better?
I think the biggest thing is what Tanya touched on is access to capital, especially in the early stages. It just pains me to in our business, medical devices in Silicon Valley, it's in Minneapolis, it's in Boston. And we do have medical device companies in this area, and it's just the early stage access to capital. So as this panel and others, develop more wealth, we need to start a fund in this Philadelphia area, because a lot of the funds have dried up in this area. And if it weren't for Ben Franklin and Jen Hart and you, Mark, I needed capital, and you guys came through at the right time. And now our company's doing extremely well. So I would say that's what we as a region really have to do, is have more access to early stage capital.
I'm so glad that Carol said that about starting a fund, because we are starting a fund.
You started with me, Tanya.
Yes, we are starting a fund in partnership with Women's Way. We are looking to start a fund, and we really want that fund to be as non-diluted as capital as possible. I put an article in the chat on some other great funds that have been started in the region as well. And so that is one thing as far as the ecosystem goes. And in the article, it talks about the fund that Della Clark is starting over at the Enterprise Center, along with Sylvester Mobley at Coded by Kids, and some other great funds that are being started in the region. Additionally, I think it's one of the things that I see in the ecosystem that I don't think we see enough of is enough talking and collaboration together. I think we have to do a lot more of that with the folks, again, my folks over at the Venture Cafe, with the folks at 76 Forward, Jennifer Mayer's co-working space, with the folks at SCORE, with the folks at Entrepreneur Works, with the folks at Finanto, or the Community Fund, which is their new name. I think there needs to be a whole Philly Startup Leaders. I think there needs to be a whole Ben Franklin Technology. I think there needs to be a whole another level of collaboration in our region if we are going to truly impact entrepreneurship. There's a bill on the table right now that Sherelle Parker has relative to the safety on the commercial corridors. There's been a lot of violence and crime on the commercial corridors. Well, what would happen? What's amazing to me is that there are so many of us that are part of this ecosystem that should be down there testifying and pushing rallying our city council people around this effort. And that's the kind of collaboration that I really, really think needs to happen. We're talking about right now the streeteries, right? To actually think that there are council people that are opposed to these streeteries in favor of parking is mind-boggling to me, when small businesses have literally suffered and almost gone out of business as a result of this pandemic. How can this even be something that's a topic of discussion? I come from the nonprofit sector, so I'm a heavy advocate. So that collaboration is something that has to happen within our ecosystem.
Okay, just to finish up, I heard collaboration, I heard capital. Angelique, Marcia, what's good? You know, Angelique, don't tell me New Hampshire's a better place for business than Philly, because I'll leave this crying. But, you know,
No.
for Marcia and Angelique, tell what's good about Philly. What do we need? What can we improve on? And what do we really
Philly-
do well?
You know, Philly is a low-cost place to start a business. That's wonderful. There's a great business school. There's great SBA groups there to help you. But we need access to large capital. So, you know, I have $85 million worth of capital equipment under management in my business. So, you know, you don't do that on 50,000, 100,000, $1 million, 2 million. You need, or you do something like I do, where you do a lot of acquisitions very cleverly, and you finance them all, and you do them all leveraged, which was a good way to start. But you know, we need large capital funds that put 5, 10, 20 million into operations. And I think that's like, you know, some of the stuff we're doing is very capital intensive.
Okay, so to just finish up, Marcia, you know, talk about Philly.
Yeah, well, you know me, Mark, I love Philly, and I think it's what you make of it too. So there are so many great untapped resources here. You just have to ask. And the thing is, you want to be careful starting a business. Time is very valuable. And you want to make sure that you're really spending your time where places are really giving you what you need to grow. And don't be so alarmed if they're not always doing it. But Ben Franklin's one of the best avenues that you could actually get involved with, and listen to their podcast and what they're doing, where they're going, ask the questions. They have the resources at your fingertips. There are so many resources in that chat. And for those who do not know, if you take your cursor, there's 3 little dots that says save chat.
Yep.
Save that chat to your own computer so that you have them for future reference. That's what they're here for. So Philly is one of the best places, I think, in America. And guys, we have seen nothing yet. You wait till you see the growth of this city over the next 10 years. It is about to explode more than it's ever been before. So definitely make sure that you have your connections. Stay in touch with your Ben Franklin. Definitely make sure you reach out to everybody here on LinkedIn and just ask, hey, can we do a virtual coffee? And start with a conversation.
All right, well,
Awesome.
and again, this is a conversation that you know, you wish could go on for a couple of hours because it's so good, but I don't want to be the last guy at the party that leaves before the host is saying, okay, get this guy out of here. We gotta finish up for the night. I really want to thank the panelists. So Angelique, Tanya, Carol, and Marcia, thank you so much. You provided a lot of insight. Who knows, maybe we could try this again, because there's still a lot of other questions and comments that people would like to explore. But thank you so much for your time today. For the participants, this again is archived. We will make sure you get to see this, and as Marcia said, please save the chat log, because a lot of really good information was popping up there. So I would like to invite everybody to just give everybody a thanks to our panelists. It was really a fun time, and enjoy the rest of the day and be safe in the holiday season. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right.